We're done. Okay, so we're going to kick off, Scott. Just a little, we're going to pause briefly before we bring you up. And Lee and Laura and Carell are going to give us a little presentation on their trip to Haiti. A few slides to show us. So
Thank you.
go through that. And while they're doing that, we have the offering going to the music fund today and the attendance record.
First of all, would everybody join me in a prayer to Heavenly Father, we thank you so much for the support that this class has given to the Water Mission in Haiti and Nicaragua. We thank you for all the many blessings we have, and we ask your blessings upon those that we help and those who are in need. In Jesus' name, amen. I just wanted to thank everybody for all the support you all give us over the past several years. You know, we've been doing the Water Mission now for I think 5 years. 4 units in Nicaragua, and now we have 4 in Haiti. What I'd like to do is share with you our recent trip, which you know we left on November 29th. It was Carell, Laura, and myself, and we went down and we met some people whose pictures you'll see in a little bit. Spent 4 days in near Port-au-Prince and installed a water purification system, which you'll see lots of pretty pictures of. Here, and when we left on Friday, it was almost ready. Saturday, they bottled the first usable bottled water. They've been bottling about 15 bottles of water a day. Sanita's the big 5-gallon water. So if you'll bear with me, Stuart, I promised 8 minutes, and I'll try to run through this in 8 minutes. So.
I never go over time, so.
First of all, we are supporting the Missionaries of the Poor, which is a Catholic order of brothers. It's headquartered in Jamaica. It has stations throughout the Third World. It's populated primarily by Filipino, Malaysians, Kenyans, and Jamaican brothers, but there are a few priests embedded in this order. But most of the brothers are, in fact, just brothers. This is their address in case you'd ever want to visit them. It's not in the prettiest part of Port-au-Prince, but we were safe. I felt very comfortable, and I think there's a lot of misconception about how dangerous Haiti is. It's not really that dangerous unless you do things you're not supposed to be doing anyway. The team was with the Missionaries of the Poor, Brother Simon, who is the youngest member of the team. He was on his first brother assignment. He's a Kenyan from Nairobi. He'd been at the site for about 3 weeks, I believe. So he was really brand new, and his eyes were about this big when he saw what his responsibilities were, because he's the one who's going to run this system and be responsible for it. Brother Andrew, is a brother who we met in Cap Haitian when we were there 2 years ago. And he moved down to this mission in Port-au-Prince to help Brother Rodell start up and take over the operation of this infirmary. OCAP, and I'm not sure what OCAP meant, but they brought a bunch of workers from Cap Haitian to help build all the facilities that they need. Very good workers. 2 of them, I'm not sure whether I still have the picture in there or not, but they're mute. And they hear everything you say, they just can't talk back to you. It's really kind of interesting. Our team, and then there's a group in New Jersey called Haiti, Hope, and Promise. Ed Saponi, who's a lawyer in New York City, AJ Capuzzi, who's a water treatment engineer with a large international engineering firm, raise about $150,000 to $200,000 a year to support the MOP. And they have a very sincere interest in Christian involvement in the Missionaries of the Poor in these 2 missions in Haiti. This is the entrance. It's a lot prettier than what we expected when we drove up. It was kind of interesting the travel we took. The roads are, let's just say, primitive. Holes probably 2 and 3 feet deep. And if you don't have a good sturdy vehicle, you're not going to get there. This is the residence hall for where the brothers are living. The part on the right is the dormitory area for the brothers. They live very Spartan. In the corner is a chapel which will eventually be replaced by a full-scale chapel, but right now they use a room about this size. And then on the left end are their dining and eating facilities. If you look from the tower that you'll see in a little bit, if you look north towards Mirabelais, where we made our first water installation, you see the beautiful mountains in the distance. You also notice that it's pretty dry. Haiti is not a jungle, it's really a desert. Very little rainfall in Haiti. This is looking east towards the infirmary area. This is where the patients are. As you can see in the foreground is where they're building. Where they're building a guest house. They have a lot of people who come in and they build a guest house so that people don't have to stay out in the economy. This is the residence laundry. As you can see, there's quite a bit of it. Probably a couple of times a day. Most of these people cannot take care of themselves from a sanitary standpoint, so there's a continual washing and cleaning process that goes on. But there are 90 children in this area, all under the age of 20, have a variety of mental as well as physical deformities. And it's very sad. Laura and Carell can tell you offline of what that's like to see some of these young kids. My hat's off in love to the brothers and the 30-some Haitian people that take care of these kids. They're truly dedicated to deal with what they have to deal with on a day-to-day basis. This is looking back towards the west. In the foreground, you can see, if you look real hard, you can see was it squash. They had squash about this big. One of the workers had cleared this. It would look like this when we arrived. And one day with a machete, he cut all that back because it grows pretty fast. Beyond the fence is a pasture where shouldn't talk with your hands. Is a pasture where they hope to eventually raise pigs and cattle and be totally self-sufficient for what they're doing. This is our team. On the far left is A.J. Capuzzi. He's one of the most dedicated Christians that I've met in a long time. He's really a wonderful man to be around. Coming from the left, we have Brother Andrew, Brother Simon, and in the back, Brother Rodell with his hands raised. As you can see, these are young men, but extremely dedicated. Laura and Carell, and then there's this ugly guy on the right. I call him Willie, you all call him Winnie. I don't know what the right name was. I think it was Willie. But anyway, he was a driver, and he took us around every place we went for 3 days. So this is the group that we supported to do all the work. Now I'm going to lead you through how the place was built and what it looks like when it's finished. The first thing we did was we uncrated everything, did an inventory, made sure that all the equipment that we had shipped from the United States to Haiti. About the only thing we bought in Haiti was the white pipe and the valves that you see. Just about everything else has to be imported. The first thing we did was we filled the water softener. Those of you who live down near the bay, you're familiar with water softeners, and they're 2 big tanks, and Carell and Laura figured out how to fill them correctly. Has to be exactly the same. They're really very good workers. This is Brother Simon. You also use salt to regenerate the resin in the water softener. So this is Brother Simon, and he was very concerned about taking the material out of that bag and putting it in. He didn't want to spill a single piece of salt. We then got Brother Simon to install the softener controller. This is the little device that sits on top of the 2 tanks and determines which one's in use and how to regenerate them when the time comes to regenerate them. Carell probably doesn't like this picture, but it's the glue experts. And you know, if you ever glued white pipe, you know, you take the primer and you take the glue and you wrap it around twice, and you wrap it around twice, and you twist it. I don't know how many joints you all put together, but they did an excellent job. This is what the system looked like after it was installed. You see at the bottom a pump that takes the water from a central raw water tank and then pumps it through our system. It leaves the pump in the top and goes up and through a sand filter. There is a lot of debris in the water, and so you want to clean that out before it goes into the rest of the system. From there, it goes from the sand filter into the water softener, and there you can see it's very pretty, well installed, and supported. And then goes into the reverse osmosis unit. Reverse osmosis is a very unique filter, very small particle filter that purifies the water to about 99.5% pure water. So it's very good water that comes out of the system. There's two big cartridge kind of filters, and then in the back, which you just barely see in the back, are the high pressure filters. The tank on the right is the raw water tank that we use to feed into the system. It's about 1,000 gallons. We do that in case they have electrical outages, which they do often. There will always be water available to run through the system. The water goes out of the reverse osmosis unit and up into the tank on the left. And that's the pure water tank. And then we gravity feed from that tank to fill the bottles. I don't know who that person is climbing down the ladder. Well, we were all very impressed that both Corell and Laura climbed up to the top of that, where those tanks were, just to see it. After it comes by gravity, it goes through an ultraviolet light, which kills any bacteria that might have formed in the water while it was up in the tank. That's the last treatment before it goes into the bottle. Laura was teaching Brother Simon the care and nurture of proper washing and rinsing of tanks before you fill them, bottles before you fill them. Obviously, you don't want to put clean water in a dirty bottle, so that step is pretty important. And here we are filling the first bottle. Brother Simon was really excited and pleased. It was amazing to watch him develop in the 4 days we were there, from having wide-eyed and bushy-tailed, you know, what have I got myself into, to being very comfortable and very proud of what he was doing. I wish I could make this work. It's not going to work, unfortunately. This is a video and has Brother Rodell doing a blessing of the system, and shows there's a guitar you can see over here in the far left, and they sing a lot of songs, and it's really very, I apologize. But again, on behalf of Laura and Corell and Steve and Bill here, and you know, all of the support that you all have given us, we really appreciate it. I hope you can see from this, it's really making a difference for those people. Thank you.
Laura and Corell, for all your great work. That's fantastic stuff. So thank you. If you can get me the video itself, we can send it out to the class.
Okay.
How about that? I was looking online to see if there was a way to make it work, but there seems to be a problem with embedding a video in a PowerPoint slide and then trying to show it on. There's other, yeah, translate. You have to use the Microsoft account. So, again, I forgot to mention that we have a candle. But again, during the Advent seasons, in memory of John and Joan Trotty, who were members, participants in this class for some 40, 45 years. I'm not sure how long. I think we lost count after 40, but anyway, it was 40 plus. So anyway, John always did his candle talks during this time of year and taught us that all of us can bear the light of Christ, no matter what religion, shape, size, or color we are. So please carry that with you. And Scott, all you, my man, last, I will move this out of your way.
Yeah, that's probably good.
And so let's give Scott a big round of applause.
We're fine. This is great stuff.
I mean,
this is like actually doing ministry and stuff.
No, there you go. Thank you for
It's terrific. We actually, in Baptist life, we have a number of projects in Haiti. In fact, a former student of mine, masters in Kilmarnock, does a lot of work there. Been there 2 or 3 trips there. So this was wonderful. I did sort of, I had to do a little bit of double take on experts in glue and joints.
But
Just be
they're
careful
not
how
ready
you-
for your knees.
I'm sorry?
They're not ready for your knees.
Okay, that wasn't the joints I had in mind, but that's okay. Not that I, no.
Just trying to divert you.
That's right, and I should have just let you do that, yes. It's wonderful to be here. The 3 weeks just zip by, and I know our time's a little tight, but just taking a moment on the front end, because we'll just, Drake will call time and you'll hold dash. So I don't want to wait to the back. Just say thank you again. It's just, I don't know how many times I've been here now, but it's always just a real pleasure and honor. It's such a bright group. I heard y'all even talked about it some at the party. Like ideas shared at the party, not just fluffy stuff. That's incredible. No, just such a terrific group. It's a little intimidating. For whatever reason, I sit over here to prepare, which has me staring directly at John. Actually, I did the math. It's 44 years that he was the teacher of this class, which is just, that's intimidating, to put it mildly. And of course, I relate to Trolley primarily through the library, which is just unbelievable. It's always a little intimidating, but I appreciate your attention and your involvement, and we'll conclude. I will perhaps cut to the chase a little bit more quickly, but I think we'll be able to do that and get some ideas in front of us fast, and you all will jump in as you've been doing. We are looking at and concluding this study of trying to understand Jesus as Messiah via a little unusual lens. I think actually makes a lot of sense, but it's not often the way we get into this, but through the temptation scene. Looking back at the birth narrative and also ahead to Jesus' ministry, but focusing on those 3 tests or temptations in various settings, although it all starts in the wilderness, and probably physically Jesus was in the wilderness the whole time, but mentally in some kind of way, the devil was whisking him here and there, and thoughts were all over the place. And this whole thing about what's being tested, I was reminded of the comment last week that a word that I jumped all on because I thought it really nailed it. The devil's just trying flat to manipulate Jesus' sense of messiahship. And there's no doubt he's the Messiah. God said he was, and this is God's choice. The anointed one, the chosen one. The baptism has certainly certified that. Jesus is very aware that this is the direction of his life, but it's still early. I don't think this whole messiahship came fully formed in Jesus' mind. Any kind of call to ministry, service, career, or whatever, you have some sense of it, but it takes some time to work into that. And I think that's true with Jesus as well. That may be a little bit of a new concept. It is a little bit for me, but it's starting to make more sense of what's actually going on in the Gospels, that Jesus is working through this. Seeing if he's, we talked, Ralph, you mentioned the idea again, is he up to this? I haven't really brought that aspect up, but that seems perfectly natural to me. At least I hope, I want leaders to, whether small, large, or whatever, to be asking those questions. Wow, this is, look what's happened. This is big. Yeah, and big can be, I'm king of the hill, to use my little illustration from today, or little title from today, but wow, that's heavy. That is burden of leadership. At least I hope so. What does that mean? Am I up to it? What directions do I go? There are bunches of choices to make. And I think this temptation scene really crystallizes that. I don't think this is the end. In fact, Luke's ending of this in chapter 4 and verse 13, which is the last little phrase on the, I've got the text on the second sheet for you, says, Luke's version is that the devil left him until an opportune time. In other words, we'll meet again. We'll do this again. One way or another. And it's just that sort of The devil sort of knew he'd been put in his place, but he wasn't giving up. And I think that's just an interesting Lucan hint that these moments are going to keep coming. We talked about the Gethsemane scene at the end as being just, again, another just really heavy-duty task where Jesus is struggling and working through this. And I'm still kind of processing this more developmental picture of Jesus as Messiah, but I think it's very important. Now, last week we used, I used sort of the image of, which seemed appropriate to the temptation of Jesus, flying off the temple, images of political theater, and images of a circus almost, as with Rome appeasing the people or trying to with bread and circuses and entertainment. Just to get back to that and then to get to our sort of climax today, using both the theater and the sort of circus image, what we've got here in theater form, if you will, is a drama in 3 acts. And we are now at the 3rd and climactic act. And I'm going to go more with Matthew's order. For whatever reason, Luke and Matthew have different number 2 and 3, but I think Matthew's order in terms of climax makes a little bit more sense. Or if you will, if you want to go with the circus thing, it's a kind of 3-ring circus with these 3 acts again going on. But in that sense of theater and circus and a lot of game playing, this is no game at all. There's gamesmanship, but it's deadly serious business. What's at stake is the very nature of Jesus' vocation, what it means to be the Messiah, and how the devil might be trying to derail all this. Well, it comes to this climax now. Remember the first one, this individual incident, zap these stones into bread. And we talked about what that might have meant. Again, that's a very manipulating kind of act, but that's not the kind of Messiah Jesus was going to be. He was going to feed folks, but not himself, and not just in these kind of, snap your finger and everybody goes ooh and ah. Last week, we had Jesus on the top of the pinnacle of the temple and being tempted to zoom off and, the devil quoting scripture, remember, he can do that. But not quite in context. Oh, the angels will bear you up. This will be wonderful. You'll be fine. God will protect you. And Jesus said, that's not quite what I'm about. Putting God to the test. God is the one who is calling the shots here. And also, we're not about just, that kind of pure entertainment where nobody gets helped. I mean, who's helped by someone flying around and not, not splatting on the ground. It just becomes sort of tabloid kind of material. So now, however, we shift to Act 3, or the 3rd ring in the circus. And I do think, in Matthew's order, it's very climactic, and we can just read it very quickly. If you'll go to that last sheet, the Matthew column, and I've underlined most of the bits, although really I'm going to start with verse 8 in Matthew. The devil took him to a very high mountain. So we've gone from wilderness to pinnacle of the temple, now to a very high mountain. How exactly that's working out, I'm not sure. I think it could very much be a kind of mental vision, but still very palpable, where Jesus is really being forced to think through these things. The devil took him to a very high mountain, showed him all the kingdoms of the world. You can see now we are beyond just one act of zapping into bread or one act of flying, but now this thing has taken on where I think it was heading all along. It's about world domination and world rule. So let's talk about the really big stuff now, Jesus. Look at somehow all the kingdoms of the world and their splendor. Look how pretty. This is all the glitzy bling of all the kingdoms of the world. Maybe hiding some other aspects. And he said to him, the devil, all these I will give you, just so you know, if you will want to fall down and worship him. Jesus said to him, away with you, Satan, for it's written, worship the Lord your God and serve him only. Such a brief little exchange, but so much going on there. Remember, Jesus is quoting scripture each time. In fact, that's all that Jesus says in these temptation scenes. He's quoting from Deuteronomy. A couple of verses in chapter 6 and one in verse 8, which is set, by the way, if you know the book of Deuteronomy, is Moses' farewell address after the children of Israel have come through the desert for 40 years. If there's more than a little association here. They've been tested and tried, and now Moses is trying to say, and what have we learned, my friends? We've learned that only a couple of us are going into the land. In fact, I'm not going either. Okay, we haven't exactly been very successful at this, so there's a bit of a tragedy. But our kids are going. What have you guys learned from your parents who died, almost all of them along the way? These are the lessons. Worship the Lord your God. Man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that comes out of God's mouth. You shall not tempt the Lord your God. Those are all Deuteronomy quotes for how to be successful as a people in the land that you're about to go into. And Jesus he's not arguing with the devil here. This is not some great debate, at least as the narrative comes to it. It's just these three quotes of Scripture, but they're all very profound in their own way. Let's look quickly at Luke's version because he adds just a little bit of stuff that I want to focus on. Now remember, his is the second one here, so you've got to start with verse 5. The devil led him up, doesn't say mountain, but somewhere up high, and showed him in an instant. I'm going to say a word about that in a minute. All the kingdoms of the world. And the devil said to him, to you I will give their glory and all this authority, for it's been given over to me. We had a question about this last week, which is a very good one, and we'll try to talk about it again, although I don't really have a good answer for it, just so you know. And I will give it to anyone I please. If you then will worship me, it will all be yours. Have I got a deal for you? Jesus answered again, it's written, worship the Lord your God and serve him only. So that sets the stage of what's going on here. By the way, at the top, I know these outlines are precious to you. You take them home and frame them and such. It should be session number 3 at the top. I forgot to change that. I also came up with a couple of ideas after I did the outline. That's what happens. The best things are after everything's over. So I've got a few things up here. Notice how I'm sort of setting this up because it really is. This is a deal. I'm going to do the King of the Hill stuff in the title for obvious reasons. It's this on the mountain, and I think I played that game as a kid. I don't know. We set up some hill and you fight for it. And I'm King of the Hill. But this is on a pretty big scale. This is Satan's been trying to push Jesus in certain directions to use his power in certain ways, but this is the only one, and I think Matthew appropriately brings this as a climax, to try to make a transaction, or at least the appearance of one. Look at all this, and I will give if you sort of tit for tat, but so much loaded in this. So I want to talk about, first of all, just this whole idea of making and faking, perhaps, a deal here. What's going on in this transaction? What's going on in Jesus' mind? By the way, I do want it known, although Nat's not here, he hassled me a little bit about that. I do want it known that I did not put the art of the deal on this. On the I just want everyone to know that I'm being very, very fair and balanced here. But still, this is making and faking a deal, and that's what power brokers do. Okay, I mean, some may be more explicit about it than others, but that can happen. That's what power is all about. Well, do messiahs make deals? Does Jesus make a deal here? This is a pretty big one. And just a couple of items just to go through quickly here without parking too much and letting you jump in where you want to. The whole staging is important. I don't think I need to say a lot about that. The fact that it is on some very high mountain. Mountains, and you might add on there if you want to, I did the Jewish stuff. I mean, you've got Mount Sinai, you've got Mount Moriah, Mount Horeb. Lots of significant things take place where God meets human beings, where significant things take place. Of course, Mount Sinai would be the most significant one in the whole wilderness experience. Moses, 40 days up there, and you know the story there. Elijah spent some time on the mountain, the great showdown at Mount Carmel. But you also have in the Greek tradition the whole Mount Olympus, where the gods are doing business. It is this sense of, all right, we've been in the wilderness, we did a little stuff in the temple. Temple's pretty big and important, but now we're looking at the whole thing. This is where divine and human realms come together. We're thinking about the whole big picture now. How big is your realm going to be? If you're a Messiah, if you're talking about the kingdom of God, you got a realm, yes? But is it big, small, whatever? Wow, this is now thinking about it in big terms at a place where one should think about such things if you're in this kind of messianic experience. Jesus is going to spend lots of time on mountains praying. That's his, particularly in Luke, that's his preferred place. And I don't think it's just, and part of it's away from the beaten path, but also this sense of trying to reflect on the big picture here. So you have this kind of transactional thing going on here. Jesus, of course, is going to be on the Mount of Transfiguration with Moses and Elijah, and that very strange experience, which just kind of pops in the middle of the narrative. On the way to Jerusalem, but again, these sort of big pictures of, it's not just, all right, what's going to go on in Jerusalem or what's going to go on in Galilee. I mean, Jesus doesn't travel very much, okay? He's not going all over the world, but there is this sense of what God is doing here concerns all of creation and all of the world. So how are you going to fit into that? Well, a mountain's a really good place to do this. And then the timing on this is kind of interesting. And here I'm just focusing on the Luke thing, which is just something that he throws in here and hits at something I have up here, and it's on the outline a bit. This thing that somehow the devil gets him to see all the kingdoms of the world in an instant. And the phrase is literally in a moment or in a flash of time. And the Greek word is chronos, where we get chronology from. In a flash of time, sees the whole thing, just like that. It's sort of it's almost a hypnotic kind of just a quick flash. And I thought a little bit about, I don't know why, just movies, the Men in Black movies. I don't know, you all are too sophisticated to see stuff like that. But you have the sort of thing that, I think it's actually called a flash, isn't it? I don't know. You all, thank you. I appreciate someone admitting. Your colleagues behind you are going, I'm sorry, I only watch Hamlet in the 1940 version. But no, it's fine. Flash and now that's a flash that kind of eliminates all thoughts and memories. But there is this here's the moment. And I do think part of the test here, and it is a question of time, because this is just Luke emphasizing this, but it is this sense of, are you going to succumb to the momentary excitement? Because there's also, and I get to this a little bit later, what he shows in the flash is the glory, the splendor. The shiny buildings, you see the shiny object? Yeah, it is almost that kind of hypnotic, like, and there's a little bit more to kingdoms and rulership than, all that glitters is not gold. But boy, the gold is nice and shiny. But what about on just the kingdom side? What about the corruption and the oppression and the violence and everything that's going on in these kingdoms? But we're not going to show that. That doesn't look good in this. And then on the other side, in terms of the kings and the rulers and the Messiah in this case, it's not all about just living in splendor and glory. One might think that there ought to be some consideration of duty and responsibility and service and the burden of leadership, and not what I can get or what will be given, but what I can give in the process. And all of that's crystallizing here. But, there's all the kingdoms, and it's so pretty. And it's just boom, And I'm here on a mountain, and all of this is that, it's that moment. But, and this one, again, it's not on the outline, but I don't know, it's about 2 this morning. I thought this was a bit, I just wake up and, there's moment, and then there is momentous, and that's the little English play. But actually, there's a significant Greek difference here. There are 2 main words for time in Greek. Chronos is just your chronology. What time is it? No, it's 10:20 or whatever it is on December 18th. Sunday, you just, yeah. But then there is kairos, which is a word for time, but is the word that stresses the significance of the time. And I actually do kind of like the play moment and momentous. What time is it? Yeah, December 18th. What time is it? It's the last Sunday in Advent. It's the Lord's Day, when we celebrate resurrection. But now we're also thinking about Advent and when Christ came and when He comes again. And we think about John Trotty and the candle. And that's, I don't care if it's 10, 20, that's the significance of the time. What time is it? It's time to go. Or it's time to stop. So, we do this naturally in English. There are an accumulation of moments, and everything happens in chronological time, but it's also, are we sensing the times, the signs of the times? Not in some, apocalyptic end time thing, but the significance of the time. The time is at hand. Lots of stuff in the gospel is about Jesus talking about, like in John, my hour is not yet here. He's not talking about 2 o'clock. He's talking about the time that God has ordered. And here, a big part of the test is that the devil, Satan, whatever, is testing Jesus and trying to get him to think of Messiahship in chronos time. These moments of, ooh, wow, pretty stuff. And boy, you can make decisions in those moments that, affect the rest of time, particularly if you're in this kind of position of leadership and such. It really is kind of a struggle. Is Jesus going to just see the moment or catch the big picture here? The devil's really good at this stuff, I think, in getting us to, and I'm sort of, focusing on Jesus, but I think we also see relevance to how we think about things. Interestingly, and again, I don't have this on the outline, so basically your outline's useless. Actually, in Luke 4:13, which is that last verse again I quoted a moment ago. This is a Lucan thing, but it fits, since Luke is the one that has the in the moment in an incident. In 4:13, the devil left him after this until an opportune time. That's kairos. So the shifting from in a moment to now, it's like the devil is thinking, but the devil's working through this too. I need to find the right time. It's all a matter of, we often joke, it's about timing. It's about also location, but it's also about its moments and momentousness here. I also jotted down quickly, just kind of pulling ideas. A Nobel Prize-winning psychologist, some of you may have read, he's still alive, in his 80s and still doing great stuff, Daniel Kahneman. He actually won the Nobel Prize in economics, but he's primarily a psychologist, but has a kind of a book that summarizes a lot of his work recently called Thinking Fast and Slow, which just seems like it's just a very simple thing. There's a lot of complexities, but it's just basically there, he says we have 2 systems of thought. And you sort of go, duh, who needs a Nobel Prize to figure this out? But there's a lot of interesting implications. We do a lot of, thinking, just responding. And we need to do that. If a snake is crawling out, I need to not really think a whole lot, unless, I can figure out, oh, that's that species and whatever. I can't. All I need to see is a wiggly stick, and you respond. That's just protective, okay? Sometimes, and then, okay, I'll do my research on, reptiles later and figure out whether that was fine. But, so we have these mechanisms, but most of the time, the thinking fast, the in an instant, squirrel, or whatever, most of that is not the best way to proceed. Slow down, get the picture, think through implications, ask questions, what's happening here? On some level, that's a little bit of, that's not quite the Greek words here. But let me stop there a bit, because, yes, please, thank you.
I just want to add, when I'm thinking about authority, momentous, the word legacy comes to mind.
Does it? Yes. Which, and that's not a bad thing. Although I think sometimes, Well, yeah, a legacy is what you're going to leave behind. Okay. Now, of course, there's always this concern to everyone. I can talk about people in power because I don't have any power. But it is that there's often sort of wanting to spin the legacy because we want people to talk about me in the right way. But in the best sense, you're right. What am I leaving with this? That's the big picture. Because whether it's, Jesus spends 1 year, 3 years, or whatever, you're exactly right.
And the final offer here is putting everything in place, the wherewithal to create the legacy. What kind of legacy do you want? Because I can make it happen.
Yes. So he claims. Yes. This is and we'll talk about that. Yeah. Yeah. What do you? And really, on even a simpler level. And again, there's the immediate and the long term. But yeah. What do you want out of this Messiah gig?
And as you were talking about the deal, it seems to me that this offer at the end is inclusive. It's all this and more. The bread and the stones. You'll be able to feed the people.
Oh yeah, no.
You'll have the full authority, the protection of the Secret Service. You'll have
good.
You'll have all of
that. No. It builds out, and what it really is then. Those are components to kind of tease and yeah. And then what we're really talking about is you're talking about world domination. You're going to have all the kingdoms of the world, and you're right, which means all the bread and all the protection and all the guns and all the et cetera, whatever you need here. This is the big deal, and Messiah. I mean, and I'm playing on this in the title for the whole series. When we talk about people having a Messiah complex, I mean, we usually think that's pathological, and I think it perhaps always borders on that. But that is this sort of grandiose, oh my goodness, I'm not just good, I'm great, I'm fantastic. And power and rule, and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And Jesus, okay, now we're happy to say Jesus is the great Messiah. He is the King of the world. But we've come to that because of the kind of character that Jesus showed during his ministry and during times like this. This is the kind of Messiah I can believe in, who in a sense doesn't want to rule the world. This is God's world. He wants to simply serve God. Well, there's a concept for you. And is willing to die and to not accumulate and all of these kind of radical things that we just sort of spit out. What do you get if you lose your soul and gain the whole world? Well, you gain the whole world, but no, it ain't worth it. Jesus says. So anyway, I'm sort of bouncing here and then here, please. Yeah.
Just real quick.
Yeah.
Einstein, when he did all this mathematics.
Yeah.
If you could move, I'm going back to the word instant.
Okay.
If you could move at the speed of light, there is no time. A flash.
Well, this would be a sort of somehow, however it's working out here, an Einsteinian kind of, and that's pretty,
That's pretty significant.
Yeah, and then, what could you do then? Now, other than, I could go really fast. Well, yeah, but how could you control and what could you manipulate? Oh, my sweet Lord, yeah. And that's what we're talking about. Power is scary, scary stuff. In the right hands, in the hands of Jesus, Lord, Messiah, crucified. Yes. Please, yes.
I was just going to say the fact that Jesus turns down the opportunity to demonstrate magic, or be a rule dominator, or he turns it all down. I think that signals that the nature of his power is altogether different than all of that.
Yes.
I mean, I think whether that's the purpose of these stories or not, it's a value.
I don't think there's any question. Absolutely, yeah. Nature, purpose, value, yeah. It really is, and I've had some other talks just in before and after sessions and such, and a couple have agreed that, this is not really about some sort of like, okay, now, well, can he really do something with these stones? Okay, well, maybe he just says no because he can't turn the stones, but how about turning a bush into bread? That you're right. This is not about any particular incident. It's about this larger sense of value and purpose and commitment, which actually goes to the very last point I have, and I want to make sure at least we give a nod to that. And I do want to do this, it'll be just the last minute, but Jesus' comeback to all of this is about worship. Okay, you shall not worship the Lord your God only, and him only shall you serve. But to your point, and I didn't really elaborate on the outline because I think this is the big point. We then go, oh, okay, well, worship. By the way, this is about, worship is about values, though. Yeah, we think of worship as either what you've already done or what you're about to go do at 11 o'clock. I don't know if you had an early service or not today, but it is, we sing some songs. But okay, it's a regular thing. It's important to us, but it's not just. It is an action, but worship is where are you focusing on? What is your sense of what matters? Who is great? Who is powerful? And obviously the answer is we come to worship God. And Jesus is worshiping God. Now, however we work through all of these, he also is God and Son of God. Actually, particularly through the Synoptic Gospels, Jesus does not go around saying, I'm God. That would be a God with a real Messiah complex. I have been chosen by God, and I am God's Son, and I'm happy to affirm this sort of Trinitarian faith. But I think we also need to appreciate that Jesus is saying, I'm worshiping my Father. I'm praying to my Father. Why is that? Because my values and commitments are to do what God wants. I guess I will go ahead. I began to see a lot of Lord's Prayer stuff and all this, and related actually to the 3 tests in some kind of ways. I don't know how much I'll be able to elaborate that, but just the prayer that Jesus prayed. It's not just that he taught us to pray, but this is what Jesus kept working with. He didn't pray, oh Lord, make me a great Messiah. Just make my kingdom just I want more. I want to be bigger. No, he said, thy kingdom come. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Now we say that probably in every worship service, don't we? And that's good. That's very appropriate. But we are saying we're not just asking, we are making strong political statements about who has the right to rule, and it's God. And that all other authorities are subject to God. We're making value commitments where, God, we want your way of ruling. Your way, because it will be the right way, the just way, the peaceful way, the restorative way, the reconciling way. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. And I think if we see that not just as Jesus says, yeah, you guys ought to pray this way, because you all need a lot of help. I think that, no, Jesus himself, in fact, in Luke's version of the Lord's Prayer in chapter 11, the setup, we're more familiar with the Matthew context and the Sermon on the Mount, which is very appropriate. But in Luke's context, Jesus teaches the prayer, a little different wording, but not a lot, after the disciples come upon him and they see him in the practice of praying. And they say, Jesus, you keep praying all the time. We see that, but you haven't really given us a little prayer seminar yet. Can you tell us how to pray? And so then Jesus, you pray this way. And in a sense, it's pray like I pray, which is quite amazing. We can call God Father too, just like Jesus does. And there's so much working in that, but it also indicates that Jesus is, I think, daily, if not moment by moment, praying this to remind himself, to affirm the value of, this is about God's kingdom, and I've come to serve that, and to serve the people that God has made me, if you will, the Messiah over. Kind of a little bit rambly there, but lots of different thoughts, but I just really do affirm that this is about values and commitment, and that worship is fundamentally about that. God doesn't need to be reminded of how great God is. Okay, this is not, God doesn't need ego boosts from us every week. Tell me again, sing praises, more. God doesn't, no. We need, though, to affirm, because in a big sense, we are what we worship, what we admire. Want to be like that. I mean, it's pretty simple, but affirming the greatness and goodness of the kind of way that God rules, as opposed to the way that Caesar rules and Herod rules. We've already done the slaughter of the innocents thing, and to connect with the birth story, that's Herod. Herod's son is going to behead John the Baptist because he couldn't take any criticism about his marriage, which was pretty dicey anyway. He took his brother's wife. All about power games. And then you've got Caesar in Luke, who does this, how does the whole birth, what's the whole scenario according to Luke? Augustus Caesar flexes his muscles. By the way, Augustus on all the coins was known as Lord and Savior and King. All the titles that we use of Jesus except Messiah, because he didn't care about that Jewish stuff. But I mean, he was claiming to be king of the world. He was emperor. He was doing pretty well. I mean, you look at all the coins and you look at all the monuments. I mean, all the social media of the day. Every time you walked out your front door, it was Augustus. Well, what does Augustus mean? The august one. That wasn't the name his mama gave him. That was his title. Octavian, it's okay. Call me the Great One. Oh yeah. And you, Son of God? Yeah, he liked that one too. And he thought he was an adopted son of God. But all of this, but what did he do? What did he do around the time of Jesus' birth? What's the great event? A census. That's how it got married, and we go, yeah, okay, fine. That gets married at Bethlehem, and that works the city. Now, what's a census all about? This was I wanted to talk about this in the first lecture. We didn't get a chance to do this, but it's sort of on the outline. It fits in here because there's a whole different way of doing the kingdom thing. Why do you take a census?
Show you how much you own.
How much you own, and is that what you said? Mm-hmm. And how much you, I thought it was just to know how many people you have so you can provide adequate services for them.
Where's that?
What? No. Yeah, okay, that knows is going to cost it. Yeah, it's about a power play. I want to say more about the census thing related to David, but our time is getting 2 minutes.
2 minute warning.
That's what Drake said. Okay, do I get like 3 timeouts? And remember, 2 minute warnings in football are about 45 minutes. You understand? No, we're not going to do that. Sorry. Let me just kind of. I really. I don't know, we sort of talked around and it's been great. I think we've got the main point here, and I went ahead and got to the Lord's Prayer stuff. I would just commend to you at some point, they're not that fancy, but under spinning the deal 1 through 5, this is there is, again, Satan is trying to make this deal. The question last week was, can he pull it off? Does he really have ownership of all the kingdoms of the world? I thought this was God's world. Well, yeah, and I think there's a gray area here. The devil in the Bible is called the ruler of this age, and clearly has been granted, if you will, if you want to deal with the overall sovereignty of God, God has granted evil the chance to do its thing if people will go that way. Now, I don't know whether he actually has the authority to make this deal. But that's not the point. I think that's part of the spin. Making promises that you really can't keep. What he wants, though, if he can get this worship thing, okay, and promise the moon. Okay, this is part of the whole. Everything is, get the big picture. Wow, promise the moon. Something for not very much. I'll just give this to you. You don't need to run for office. You don't need to do anything. You don't need to pay me any real money. Just bow down. It becomes this loyalty thing. Just trust me. Just believe in me. Just. And so I think there's a lot of gamesmanship going on in all of this. That again comes back to this situation of whether he could or couldn't pull this off. It's trying to get Jesus thinking in worldly kingdom terms where, to be crass about it, these kinds of deals can be cut for personal interest. And whether the truth is being told or not, I even used the illustration somewhere, this number 5, about that really what the devil's just trying to do is disrupt the whole system. And yeah, I did in parentheses because I couldn't help myself, just did he's trying to hack into this whole thing. Just trying to go, okay, oh yeah, God's come, and here's the Son of God here, and but you know what, and it's gonna, God's gonna eventually get what God wants, but boy, I'm gonna make it, I'm just gonna make it go as crazy as I can to just disrupt and deceive, and it's just more chaos, we can do that. And because Jesus had this Messiah, but what kind of Messiah is going to be? He's going to be, really plays out. Let me just stop there, because now I'm sure we only have like 15 seconds. But you, just kind of final comments, just look through that spinning the deal at some point.
Thank you.
Right.
Thank you.
No, but that's cool. Very good. Yes, good,
Thank
good.
you.
Great stuff.
Scott, thank you.
The Haiti mission.
We didn't have a chance to show candle talks during December, which we normally do, but if